It was one of those days where it felt like the universe was conspiring against me, and nothing seemed to go right. The moment I opened my eyes, a heavy sense of exhaustion washed over me. I felt as though I hadn't slept a wink, and I struggled to push myself out of bed. The tiredness wasn't just in my mind, it was in my very bones. I had been feeling under the weather for the past few days, but today was different. My body was sore all over, like I had been carrying an invisible weight. My back, my shoulders, even my feet, all seemed to scream out in pain. The aches were unbearable, and it became clear that my body had reached its breaking point. I had been pushing myself relentlessly for days, juggling so many tasks: cleaning, cooking, running errands, taking care of everything at home. It seemed like there was always something more to do, and I never allowed myself the time to rest. I had been on my feet, constantly moving, barely giving myself a moment of reprieve. But today, it felt as though my body had finally rebelled. Every muscle in my body felt tight and stiff, sending an unmistakable signal that it was time to slow down. My neck felt like a heavy weight was pressing down on it, and even the smallest movement made the pain flare up. I tried to stretch, but my limbs felt as though they were made of lead, sluggish and unresponsive. It wasn't the first time I had felt this level of fatigue, but today the exhaustion was stronger, more all-encompassing. I couldn't shake it off, no matter what I tried. I started by sitting on the couch, hoping the discomfort would subside, but if anything, it only grew worse. The pain seemed to spread, consuming every part of me. I knew I needed to take it easy, but the thought of just stopping and doing nothing frustrated me. There was always so much to do, and I didn't like the feeling of being unproductive. Yet, as the hours ticked by, I realized that I had no other choice but to rest. Every time I shifted on the couch, I felt another wave of discomfort, and my back seemed to ache in places I hadn't noticed before. It was as if the weight of the entire week had caught up to me all at once, and now my body was making me pay for it. I tried to relax, to stretch, to do something to ease the pain, but nothing seemed to help. The house was eerily quiet, and as I sat there, wondering how I was going to get through the day, I heard footsteps approaching. It was Jason, my stepson. He had always been a kind and perceptive person, someone who always seemed to notice when something was wrong, even when I tried to hide it. Over the years, we had developed a strong, comfortable relationship. Ever since I married his father, we had grown close, and he had always been respectful, caring, and quick to offer help whenever I needed it. "Are you okay?" he asked. His voice filled with genuine concern as he noticed me sitting on the couch, looking worn out. I forced a small smile, trying to mask my discomfort, but I knew he could tell something was wrong. For a brief moment, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to burden him with my pain, but it was becoming clear that I couldn't handle it on my own. After a few seconds, I sighed deeply, my body aching with every movement. "Actually," I said, "I think I could really use a little help. My back hurts so much. Would you mind maybe massaging it for me?" As the words left my mouth, I felt a little embarrassed. I didn't want to make him uncomfortable or seem weak, but at that moment, the pain was too much to bear. I knew he had always been kind, and I trusted him, but still, asking for help wasn't easy. To my relief, Jason didn't hesitate. His face lit up with that warm, reassuring smile I had come to rely on. "Of course, I'll help you," he said, his tone sincere. I felt a wave of gratitude for his willingness to assist me. As he began to massage my shoulders, I could immediately feel the tension in my muscles begin to ease. His touch was gentle but firm, working in slow, deliberate circles along my back. I closed my eyes, focusing only on the soothing sensation of his hands on my sore muscles. For the first time that day, I felt a sense of relief, as though the weight of the world was being lifted off me. If only for a few moments, it was as if all the stress, the worry, and the physical pain had melted away with each movement of his hands. I let go of all my anxieties, allowing myself to simply enjoy the calm that his kindness had brought me. As Jason continued to massage my back, the pain that had been consuming me started to fade. His touch was so thoughtful and reassuring, and it made me realize how lucky I was to have someone like him in my life. We hadn't said much, but there was an unspoken understanding between us. He cared about me, and he wanted to help. I felt truly appreciated in that moment, and it was a reminder of how even the smallest acts of kindness can make a significant difference in someone's day. Then, as he worked his way down my back, Jason said something that caught me off guard. "You have a really nice body," he remarked with a friendly, sincere smile. His tone was soft, and his words felt completely innocent, nothing like what I might have imagined. First, I was taken aback. It wasn't the kind of comment I had expected, especially in this context, but I quickly realized that it was just a simple compliment. Nothing more. He wasn't being inappropriate, he was just offering a kind word. I blushed slightly, unsure of how to respond. "Thanks," I said softly, trying to mask my embarrassment. But deep down, I felt a little better. It was a small compliment, but on a day when I was feeling so worn out, it made me feel seen, appreciated, and a little bit lighter. It was a reminder that even small, kind gestures can lift someone's spirits, and how important it is to show appreciation, especially when someone is struggling. When the massage finally ended, I felt an incredible sense of relief. The aching in my back had disappeared, and I could move without the sharp, nagging pain that had plagued me earlier. I stretched my muscles, feeling them loosen for the first time all day. I looked at Jason and smiled, truly grateful for his kindness. "Thank you so much," I said, my voice filled with genuine appreciation. He smiled back, his eyes full of warmth. "No problem," he said. "Anytime." As I sat up, I realized that something had shifted between us. We had always gotten along well, but that simple act of kindness had brought us closer. It wasn't that anything strange or uncomfortable had happened. It was just that the moment had deepened our connection. We didn't need to say much. There was an unspoken bond now, one of mutual care and understanding. Jason's gesture had reminded me of the power of small acts of kindness and how they can have a profound impact on our lives. It made me realize how important it is to take a moment to appreciate the people around us, especially when they show us compassion without hesitation. And for me, that simple act of helping, of offering comfort and care, had made all the difference on a day that had been so overwhelming. It reminded me deeply of how much he had grown over the years, and just how much we had learned from one another. I couldn't help but reflect on the journey we had shared, from the awkward beginnings of our relationship to this moment of mutual respect and understanding. Being a step-parent is no easy task, comes with its own set of challenges, moments of uncertainty, and times when things can feel a little out of place. However, in that particular instant, I recognized how far we had come, how much we had both adapted and evolved in our roles. The respect I had for Jason had grown immensely, and I could see that he too had developed a genuine respect for me. We had found a delicate balance, a shared sense of understanding, and I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for that. As the weeks passed, everything seemed to return to a familiar rhythm. Jason and I resumed the usual day-to-day moments, those seemingly trivial exchanges that had come to define our relationship. We found joy in the simplest of things, laughing at silly inside jokes, talking about the mundane happenings of our day, and enjoying the quiet comfort that comes with routine. We would watch TV together, chatting about whatever had happened at school or work, and sometimes, we'd just sit in companionable silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. It felt as though nothing had changed. Our respect for one another remained, and the bond between us seemed to grow even stronger. But then, one afternoon, something entirely unexpected occurred, caught me completely off guard. Everything seemed normal at first. I was going about my usual tasks, with no hint that anything was amiss. The day had been long, and I had settled into a routine that felt comforting and familiar. Yet, suddenly, I could feel a shift, a change in the air, that told me that things were not as simple as I had once believed. It was late in the afternoon when it happened. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner after a particularly exhausting day. I could feel the weariness setting in, my feet aching from standing for hours. and my mind heavy with all the things that needed to be done. As I chopped vegetables, trying to focus on the task at hand, all I wanted was to sit down for a moment and let the tension melt away. That's when Jason walked in. He seemed to immediately notice how tired I looked. Though he didn't say anything at first, I could tell he was paying attention, his gaze softening as he took in the sight of me. After a few moments, he spoke, his voice gentle but filled with conviction. "Let me help you relax your body," he offered. "You've been working so hard all week." I stopped for a second, surprised by his words. It was thoughtful of him to notice my exhaustion, and in that moment, I felt a sense of warmth. I hadn't expected him to offer help in this way, and yet, the thought of being able to unwind for a little while felt incredibly comforting. It was one of those rare moments when someone's kindness really shone through, and I couldn't help but smile, touched by the sincerity in his offer. My body ached from the long day, every muscle protesting with each movement, and the idea of receiving help, especially from someone who genuinely cared, seemed like a relief. In that moment, I realized just how much I needed the help he was offering, though a part of me hesitated, unsure if it was the right thing to do. Another part of me welcomed the idea with open arms. "Are you sure?" I asked him, my voice soft and uncertain. I wanted to make sure that he truly meant it, that he was genuinely willing to help. And part of me questioned if it was too much for him to offer. Despite feeling tired and worn out, his offer seemed like exactly what I needed. But I still needed to make sure he was comfortable with the idea too. Jason nodded, his face warm and confident, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He seemed completely at ease, eager to help. Together, we worked in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, stirring the pot, and preparing everything for the meal. It was one of those moments when everything just clicked. We worked side by side, laughing at small jokes, talking about our day, and just enjoying the shared task at hand. The kitchen filled with the delicious smell of our cooking, and I found myself surprised by how much fun we were having in such an ordinary setting. As we finished cooking, the meal turned out to be something really special. The food was delicious, and there was a sense of accomplishment in the air, a shared pride in what we had created together. Once everything was on the table, we made plans to spend the rest of the evening relaxing, enjoying each other's company without any rush or stress. I noticed that Jason seemed genuinely excited about the evening ahead, and I couldn't help but smile, feeling thankful for the simple joy of being with him. Afterward, Jason and I set the stage for a calming evening. We dimmed the lights, lit a few candles, and the flickering flames added a soft, intimate glow to the room. The music in the background was soft and soothing, perfectly complementing the peaceful atmosphere. As the tension of the day began to melt away, I could feel myself letting go of the stresses I had been carrying. True to his thoughtful nature, Jason offered to help me relax even further. He gently guided me to a chair, his touch firm yet caring. As he began massaging my shoulders, his hands worked expertly, easing the knots of tension that had accumulated throughout the day. Each stroke was deliberate, each movement was focused, and I could feel the relief spreading through my body. It wasn't just my body that was relaxing. It was as though the weight of my thoughts and worries was being lifted as well. The calmness of the room and his soothing presence made me feel completely at ease. But then, unexpectedly, Jason paused. His hands lingered on my back, and the room fell into a moment of silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Would you like me to continue? I could help you with something else, something that might bring you even more relief." His voice carried a hint of uncertainty, as though he was unsure of how his words would be received. I turned slightly to meet his gaze, surprised by his offer. Before I could say anything, he added, his tone softer now, "A happy ending." The words hung in the air, and I froze, unsure of how to respond. I had not expected this, and the sudden shift in the conversation left me feeling a bit disoriented. The room seemed to hold its breath, the tension palpable. It wasn't what I had anticipated, and yet, there was something in the way he spoke. His tone was not demanding but rather filled with quiet confidence and a hint of vulnerability that made me pause. In that moment, I realized just how far our relationship had come. The connection we had built over time was deeper than I had realized. And there was an unspoken trust between us now, one that was undeniable. Though I felt a mix of curiosity and hesitation, there was also something else, something I couldn't quite place. A feeling, a pull, an unspoken desire that made me question whether this moment would change everything between us. As I looked into his eyes, I realized that whatever path we chose to take from here, it would be one we would navigate together. A deep, stirring sensation rose inside me, one that I hadn't anticipated but couldn't deny. My body, still humming with the tension and energy of the day, seemed to react before my mind could catch up. I felt a heat spread through me, a fierce longing that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long, one that I had tried to push aside but was now surging forward, more intense than ever. It was as if my heart and soul were reaching for something, for someone, something I had kept hidden for so long but now could no longer contain. For just a fleeting moment, I hesitated. My mind raced, unsure of what this would mean, unsure of where this would take us. My breath caught in my throat, and it was then that I realized the desire between us had grown undeniable. The connection we shared was no longer something I could ignore or avoid. It had blossomed into something so real, so palpable, that it was impossible to pretend otherwise. Despite the uncertainty clouding my thoughts, there was a part of me, an instinct, a truth that knew this was what I wanted. I wanted him, in this moment, in this way, more than I had ever wanted anything before. The vulnerability I felt wasn't something to shy away from. Instead, it only seemed to magnify the depth of my desire. It wasn't just about the physical pull between us. It was something far more profound, something I hadn't anticipated but could no longer deny. I took a long, steadying breath, my thoughts whirling as I gathered my resolve. Then, with a mixture of anticipation and surrender, I whispered the word that had been building within me, desperate to escape. Yes, it was a simple word, but it carried with it the weight of everything that had led up to this moment, everything that I had kept buried deep inside. As the word escaped my lips, a wide grin spread across his face. There was a fire in his eyes, a spark of excitement, of anticipation, and something more that made my heart flutter uncontrollably. His smile wasn't just one of amusement, it was a smile that seemed to say everything, one that spoke volumes of what was to come, of the depths he was willing to explore with me. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming the space between us. "I'm ready for you today," he said, his voice calm yet filled with an unmistakable warmth. Like the sun rising after a storm, the certainty in his tone, the quiet confidence, sent a wave of electricity through my entire being. It wasn't just a casual statement, it was a promise, an invitation, and the unspoken assurance that this moment was exactly where we were meant to be. The sincerity in his words left me breathless, a feeling of anticipation filling every inch of my body. His expression softened as he looked at me, his smile lingering but now deeper, more intense, as if his words had stirred something within him, something raw and real. The air around us shifted, and suddenly, everything else faded into the background. The noise of the world, the chaos of the day, all disappeared. In that moment, there was only him, only the intensity of his gaze, and the unspoken connection that pulsed between us. I felt wanted, seen, and ready to embrace whatever came next with him. To my surprise, he moved toward me with a gentleness and a depth I had never before experienced. It wasn't just a tender approach, it was a combination of softness and a depth of emotion that resonated deep within me. It was as if something had shifted between us, a silent understanding that had transcended the physical space we shared. The air itself seemed to grow heavier with the unspoken bond between us, charged with a new understanding that neither of us had anticipated, but both could not ignore. Every movement he made was deliberate, measured, but not in a way that felt forced. Each touch, each glance was filled with purpose, yet there was an effortless quality to it, as though everything between us was unfolding naturally, as if we had always known how to move in perfect harmony. It was as though he wasn't just responding to my body, but to my very soul. His every gesture felt like a quiet exploration, an attempt to understand me in the most intimate and profound way possible. He wasn't just touching me, he was learning me, connecting with me on a deeper level that went far beyond the physical. Each moment that passed between us felt more profound than the last, as if we were uncovering a new layer of understanding, one that was raw and real, untouched by the world outside. There was no rush, no sense of urgency. Time slowed down, and in those moments, it felt as though the universe had conspired to bring us together, to give us this one perfect instant of connection. There was no room for distractions, only the pure, simple exchange of energy between us. The intensity of his touch was not overwhelming, it was comforting, yet firm, as though he respected the depth of what we were sharing. It wasn't a fleeting moment of attraction, but something deeper, something that had the potential to change both of us. Every touch, every breath, every heartbeat felt synchronized, as though we had both found a rhythm, a cadence, that aligned perfectly with one another. It was a dance, a beautiful, unspoken dance of trust and discovery. As we continued to share this moment, everything felt different. There was a peacefulness to it, a sense of calm that I hadn't expected. I had braced myself for the intensity, for the overwhelming sensations that came with such vulnerability, but instead, I felt a deep sense of serenity, as if everything that had ever caused me stress or doubt had melted away. In that space, I could feel myself letting go of all the uncertainties and fears that had once plagued me. It felt as though I was surrendering to the moment, allowing myself to be fully present with him, free of judgment, free of hesitation. In the quiet afterglow, I realized that we had shared something incredibly profound, something that had gone beyond the physical realm and touched something deeper, more meaningful. There was no room for doubt, no lingering questions about what this meant or where it would go. In that moment, felt true, felt right. The world outside us had faded completely, leaving only the two of us, fully immersed in the bond we had created. This wasn't just an exchange of bodies, it was a revelation, a shared moment of clarity that left me feeling both exhausted and fulfilled. There was no guilt, no shame. There was only the purity of the experience, the truth of the connection we had formed, the weight of the past, the pressure of expectations, the anxieties that had once clouded my thoughts. All of it dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the two of us in this shared space of freedom. In that silence, everything that had once held me back seemed to vanish. There were no barriers, no walls between us, just the raw essence of who we were. Sharing this moment in perfect harmony, it was a perfect union of body, mind, and soul, one that transcended anything either of us had experienced before. It was a bond that left us both feeling whole, fulfilled, and ready to take on whatever came next together. As I looked at him, I realized that in this moment, we had both found exactly what we needed. And perhaps, in this moment, we had found what we had been searching for all along. Thank you for taking the time to watch our videos. If you find the content useful and interesting, don't forget to like, share, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Our channel will always update attractive, inspiring, and useful content for you. Click the bell icon to receive notifications as soon as there are new videos. Your support is the biggest motivation for us to continue to develop. Thank you and see you in the next videos.